Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. Hopefully my voice is audible and this airplane gets to its destination safely. So, I would like to begin this episode speaking about something that many people don't attempt to for multiple reasons. One, well, firstly, I'm going to speak about the idea of an internal object, the concept of an inner sight, what that means to have sight from within. And the concept of clairvoyance, where certain people on this planet, or at least certain people at certain phases of their life, it's an idea that is real to them. Now, clairvoyance is the implication of seeing something more out of a picture that goes beyond sensory perception. You know, that means for all those human beings in this world who they have acknowledged the transcendental, who they have acknowledged angels and demons, for all those human beings who had acknowledged mythology and the types of creatures and formations we found in that. So what is, really the question is, what is our eyes? What is looking and what is being seen, and how, what is the significance also of what is being seen? This episode, guys, because this is something that I don't usually this directly speak about, I might require paper to take some notes to when the geometry of an idea expands. A pen and a paper need to be there. I'll be right back, guys. Okay, so let's find a gentler song and I'll dive into this to the best of my ability. Seems like, let's see, there we go. So the concept of clairvoyance, inner sight. The first thing we can do, or in any attempt to understand something, one has to start with at least a fixed point. That means when we wonder about who we are, we start off saying we're a creature on earth. That idea becomes the fixed point, you can say, or the original point of the inner observation. First thing is, what are we found in? What do we have? as if we are a general and on an unknown battlefield, and we've opened our eyes and we want to know what resources we have. We want to know what is at our disposal, what is able to move. We find ourselves as an object initially, and as this object moves, we extract subjective meaning from it. Now, what is an object and what is a subject? And the fixed view, I would say, or like the initial point where we're starting this, where we should think about this episode, is the eyes. So I want everybody who is listening to this episode, hopefully this isn't on mute, I want everybody who's listening to this episode for a moment, just realize they have eyes. And there may be some listeners among us who they may not be able to join the exercise, but I will say that the eyes is just sight. And there's two types of sight. And this is what I'm saying, that the whole world, or at least the the absolutist materialism ideologies are not saying. You see, there is an outer sight. So in front of our eyes, we have an outer objective realm. This is undeniable simply because we can touch stuff and it's physical in nature. So starting from the eyes like a dot, we draw a right line from that dot, and we call that the outer realms. And another term for it is the external realms. Another term I use for it the objective realms. And where from that point where sight is strangely beaming out, even though our eyes are like Cyclops had light coming out of his eyes, we have eyes, Cyclops from the X-Men, we have light entering our eyes. And this is very crucial to recognize, that our eyes are actually canals of information to the body. They're literally like gates. They're, believe it or not, stargates. Like starlight is going in your eyes. There's nothing more closer to a gate than that, you know. And it's entering your inner realm. So you can say the human biological organism is a relationship between an internal dimension and an external dimension. Due to how we have explored the external dimension, we have avoided the internal dimensions of intelligence. But the issue with the internal dimensions of intelligence is that it cannot be shared, simply because it is embracing dynamism, change, and it's like a person, it's like a horse galloping. You know, a horse that is galloping, you can't define the horse by one location it is in. It is constantly moving. So the mind is alive. And we know this because we are alive. Now, to start a relationship with our mind, some people can, sure, you know, you can yogi it out, you can go spiritual really quickly and feel like you are walking in a realm where the gods are guiding your every gaze, you know, your every step, your every decision, you know. Certain yogis back in the day, they felt this whole life was the game of the gods, that man was inferior and we were just for show, we were the entertainment of higher dimensions, or entertainment for higher dimensions. But in reality, the concept of God in this era of ours has a new authorization to be accessed. And this is where it gets really interesting, I hope, in this episode, where I'm going to try to share perspectives that lift beyond the religious angle. Why? Because God is an untouchable concept, and religions are touching it. And there is something important of one's relationship. I'm not denying the grace and love that can be found in a community of kind-hearted people. I am saying that there are certain ideological systems that are a cloth over the truth. And imagine, you know, you realized, I don't know, imagine a person who has a very nice car, you know, and that person has it covered, you know, and the car cannot be seen, and unless the person pulls the covers, they can't access the direct experience of the vehicle. And sometimes language and religious ideology is that cover on true experiences. So, and of course, all that I can share really is my experience. So people listening to me in these podcasts, in these podcast episodes, they should be considerate that I'm just one, like, 1 out of 8 billion human beings on a giant rock in a universe where the edge I can't see, and even when I look at the sky, it's a certain range of perception. And what I see in the outer realms is phenomenal. It's a relationship of color plus geometry, and then plus depth, which is the dimensional aspect, There's a reason we have master painters, and just pretty much painters back in the day didn't have a choice, because the king would enlist them, and the king would say, I don't know, draw a masterpiece on the ceiling of my church, And back in the day, people like Michelangelo were like, shit, I gotta do it, I guess. Because the king was requesting it, And so if the artwork was flawed, the king would punish, And so this is something where a lot of people, I think, won't, that it doesn't really need to be spoken about, but greed led to the evolution of various technologies and artwork. That means sometimes if you look at human history and you don't see a selfish animal, a lot of the things we have developed today, you wouldn't see it at all, So, from that point, when in front of our eyes, please, whoever's listening, if you care about how I'm looking at it, in front of our eyes, it is the outer realms. Behind our eyes, I've termed it the inner realms. People have given this different terms. I am not the first philosopher doing it. I am the first philosopher, though, in history who is ridiculously zooming in on this concept. I'm trying to make it, trying to put it in the philosophical universe, but it's the idea of Mr. Within's inner realm and outer realmism, right? Outer and inner realmism, and the whole notion is that I don't see spirit guides, I don't see angels, demons, I don't see entities, but I see a state where the seer is unconditional. There are two spaces to get acquainted in. In front of your eyes, your body is moving in outer space. Behind your eyes, your attention instantaneously shifts to the phenomena in the inner space. Or as, I shouldn't say, it can't be called phenomena actually. Immanuel Kant called the inner realm noumenon, where noumenon took place. This object-subject distinction is so key, because certain schools of thought consider the subject being empty. That means it doesn't exist. Some schools of thought consider the subject to be the soul, the prime mover, the free will, whatever truth is looking out of our eyes. Sorry guys, I had this on mute and I was just firing away. Anyways, to continue, I don't know from where the audience heard it, but I'm just gonna go with the flow. Pretty much, the Immanuel Kant. Yes, it was Immanuel Kant. He perceived that the noumenon is what goes on behind our eyes. Phenomenon is what goes on in front of our eyes. We look at phenomenon. Now, the issue in philosophical circles is that the analytical philosophers like the material more than the immaterial, and the continental philosophers like the unknown more than the known. And so the two types of, I would say, ultimate philosophies that come from what is going on with our sight in this world is that, one, there is no such thing as noumenon, and noumenon, that means the mind is a very complex projection. So the mind, it's as if matter is, in one angle of philosophy, matter is the cause of the realm and the immaterial is its effect. In another modality, the immaterial is the cause and matter is its effect, and strangely science perceives it that way because the origin of the universe is unknown, and there is a reason we call it Big Bang Theory. If I choose to see matter as the cause, the effect will ultimately come back to the cause. And this is ultimately the hilarious distinction between religious eyes and secular eyes. Secular eyes see that whatever imaginary construct, whatever content, whatever your mind does in this life, it returns to a material point. Right? That means the attention dismantles from the material perspective, and the world continues being the world, even though we disappear from it, our subject. Right? Are the subject of us, the idea of how we lived and who we were, could echo in future generations, like stories live longer than people. But the resolution of what happens to the attention through change, I would say that to be able to discriminate between an internal object and an external object is actually a prerequisite for functioning in a social system. That means human beings have to have an ability to consider what is actually there and what is not there. We could even say a science fiction example, like imagine some people went to the park for a walk and an extraterrestrial landed, but the extraterrestrial was so advanced, let's say from dimensions beyond time, beyond the fourth dimension, and so this extraterrestrial could actually put any idea and could manifest as any idea. So it would be as if how does one communicate to with a disembodied entity? With how does one communicate with unconditional energy? And the way it happens is that through the rhythm. So some sorts of intelligence, they adjust to you. Some sorts of intelligence, some types of intelligence, you have to adjust to it, right? We feel that we have to adjust to it, and a lot of people on the planet is like, advanced civilization to a point where we can communicate with, even if there were aliens, we could communicate with it, But really what is going on is that a mystery is breathing. We are the breathing mystery. So certainty automatically becomes fallacy. That means for a person to say it's exactly like this, it's like you're done. You've been knocked out of possibilities of, reality. But what I'm trying to say is that discrimination between what is inner realm content and what is outer realm content. I forgot to finish up one idea. That distinction I was making between the analytical philosopher and the continental philosopher is simply this, that the analytical philosopher, the continental philosopher, how would I say it? The continental philosopher is not ignoring imagination. That means it's as if there was never a physical phenomena here, You can say there was a mind, and this mind projected the illusion of matter, and at the end of this life returned to itself. I feel there's two types of transitions in life. Like when one, I don't know, I mean, I haven't piloted beyond the physical yet. My attention hasn't piloted beyond the physical yet, but I'm still, from the beginning of my life until this point, positioned in a materialistic existence, which I am subjectively experiencing. But when I wonder about the subjective experience, and I wonder about, okay, so this is temporary, so what that means is I'm on vacation. That means it's like some people feel like, I incarnated in this world to fulfill my spiritual mission. My mentality is, okay, I incarnated in this realm to be on a vacation from the Supreme Personality, because the concept of death is man-made, but also the concept of life. These are man-made ideas. There is a real outer realm component to it. I mean, we are living our lives, but when you look at what's really happened, creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere started making noise, and they started connecting in a subtler dimension of their intelligence symbols to this noise, and then those symbols became them. Right? So we are creatures of language. If someone knows your name, whenever they call, like, your attention is summoned to where they are, you see? So it's as if like your attention is identifying with the sound or the name or the symbol, right? So we have to notice that in the outer realms, like again towards the idea of the continental philosopher saw that there was no language. Like, what I mean by that is that the mind, it has been the mind from the beginning. There's a view that something is caused, then it transforms into an effect, so the cause is no longer accessible. But then there's a view that the cause expressed in its own dimension, and what we experience to be the effect is its own dimension. That means the source of everything is alive. That means all our ancestors are alive. Their simulations of their existence are dwelling in the void as signals that have nowhere else to go other than move in a vacuum. So the continental philosopher was convinced that the interaction with an intelligent internal object was a suggestion that the source of intelligence was not objective. So what that means is there is something more than matter here, but we can't put words to it. We can't give it a shape, size, measurement, simply because it is being. You see, it is not individual. Only individual things can measure. That means it's as if there was a technology in the future. Imagine some strange robot, that every you threw this strange, let's say some sort of like small spherical robot, okay, or a disc-like robot, let's say, and you threw this robot in the future on the beach. Okay, on a beach where there's sand. And this robot had a way and had a recording mechanism where it could count the sands of a beach without repeating the same sand. Somehow it had that precision, imagine. Do you know? It's as if something that has a form that can be separate can be measured. That means if we have two objects and they are separate, we can be like, okay, this is object one, that's object two. But if the two objects were connected, we can't suddenly say object one and two exist. So it's as if the ignorance of reality is like, object one and two have been, through language, are being lived dualistically. There's a dualistic dimension to the story of life we tell ourselves and navigate through. But at the same time, when we come to the union of intelligence, there is no life and death. right? So that totally changes the context. And when you realize there is an outer realm, and somebody, called Mr. Within is telling you there's an inner realm, look at the outer realm and look at how it changes. The secret of life is in honestly how there is something in every moment that is like the important change. I don't know how to say it, but it's like that's how we truly know we are alive. We are called towards the wonder of our observation. Believe it or not, it's like a force. It's like we have no choice other than to be inquisitive and explorative of what we find. It's like that's mankind's true spirit, the spirit of the explorer. Because why else would there be an infinite world with endless designs in it? This planet, Aldous Huxley, this very profound professor, university professor, he had this quote where he said, what if this planet is another planet's hell? He was definitely diving into the deep there. But we can say, what if this planet is a heaven for designers? That means the moment you choose to be a designer, you have endless information around you. I'm telling you, that's the hilarious thing. Geometry is being avoided. For me, my inner realms have an incredible geometrical component. That means imagine being raised through a context during your childhood where you are introduced to the ideas of religion and you're introduced to the ideas of traditional spirituality, where the soul is hopping from incarnation to incarnation to find freedom. And then imagine throughout your life experiencing a complete geometrical relationship. When I say geometry is divine. I'm saying geometry is something where you cannot have an emotion to. And I'm not talking about like going into a cathedral with incredible architecture and crying, but I'm saying it's like in your inner realms, it's like if you saw the ghost of your ancestors, well, like that's something. If you saw like a mythological creature, that's something. If you saw an alien, that's something. But if you see just random geometrical shapes move, that living geometry, I've termed it, geometry that is alive in the inner realms, in that inner space, then that has nothing to do with any culture or context. It is like the strangest spiritualism, It's the one where it's like the divine, that concept is how the geometry that is the meaning of the moment moves, how it pilots on. I honestly, when I came up with this concept of pilots of consciousness, I was like, yes. It was like an idea I was looking for. You don't understand. Some things the soul looks for, the mind. Some things the mind looks for, the body can't see. Some things the mind looks for, the soul looks for, the mind can't see. So from understanding also that we are the pilot of our attention in this world, and me personally, after seeing so much geometry overlaid upon the geometry of reality, for me, there was this Indian mathematician who I don't remember his name, but he was like this prodigy, genius mathematician who solved things in mathematics no one could miraculously. And they asked him, how do you know it? And he's like, I have a Devi. And that Devi is a term. It's first of all, it's not a Western term, it's an Eastern term, and it suggests to God, so it's the Logos. So when you see a lot of people, including pretty much all the philosophers, not all of them, but like for example, Friedrich Nietzsche had like for example, some entity, he saw it as a demon, kind of like was guiding him. Socrates saw something called the inner oracle. That was his relationship with the Logos. Plato called it what do you call it? Plato called it Damon, or sorry, it might have been Descartes. I'm not sure there, but I don't think it was Descartes. I think it was Plato. But daemon, different than it even, in Vedic times it was like the gods, the various gods they had. So really when we wonder about our mind, we're wondering about the domain of intelligence. The domain of intelligence can have archetypes. Like, I don't know who you are listening. You might be a person right now listening where you have a specific set of ideology that has given you access to experiences of a metaphysical nature. But does that mean the ideology is superior than the experience? This was something that the Buddha understood, that the interdependence of origin means that after some point, even the inner and outer realms can be witnessed simultaneously into what I would call the point of evolution of the species as the transcendent animal. And this means that we have gone beyond subjective living as a species, but this is way ahead in our future. Right now, we're just getting a sense of what our minds are. We're like a species, where every person is given, in accordance to their unique DNA and unique cultural upbringing, they are given an instrument. Right, so right now when I'm talking to you, I'm imagining, like, I don't know, there's 8 billion different kind of instrument ways where brains are expressing themselves as individuals out there, Now, if we treat the intelligence like an instrument, then your sight becomes how you play the instrument. And this is, I think, a very important concept, that time has to exit the picture when it comes to creative observation. So, by the way, something to really quickly share. I saw it in the future that this whole thing, if we use these terms in society, the inner realms and the outer realms, these terms can revolutionize just the people on the planet, and you can imagine how much unsought communication that was lost in the silence would be accessed, right? So imagine a child, and this is recorded by many psychologists, it's like just a statistic that many children from the ages of 8 or 5 up, I don't know, some very young age, they see invisible friends, they see imaginary friends, right? And so the kid sees an imaginary friend and comes to the parent, and it's like, I saw like I don't know, something, and the parent's like, oh sweetie, that's not real, that's your imagination, go back to play. And the kid's like, what does that even mean? So children don't even understand. I feel many children, the issue is they don't even understand how their sight is happening. And this is a personal search. Every person like it's one of those alone things you do in life, to discover the nature of your eyes, because it's no one else's responsibility when you are the pilot in the room of your attention. So the parent would say in the future, instead of dismissing the imagination of the child, the parent would explain to the child, okay, there are some things that are found in our outer realms, such as objects, such as products in a store, and there are some things that are found in our inner realms, such as ideas, such as subjects, and a person has to explore this in order to strengthen the armor of, I don't want to say mental health, because there's no such thing as mental health. The mind is a endlessly changing states all the time. It is only in our physical appearance that it is the same. That means really we are not embodied beings. We are a movement of universal intelligence that is just separating itself from the world for a little while. And that's a rare opportunity. I feel being human is the oddest and rarest thing that could have happened in this cosmos. Just the emergence of sophisticated creatures, and give me a break, the world appears fine-tuned to our existence. Do you know? It's as if we're a puzzle piece in a completed puzzle, wondering, oh my god, why are we still puzzle pieces though, So, in the future, parents can be conscious of their child's inner realm. You know, they can make children of this planet realize what is inner realm, what is outer realm, and when you realize the difference, it doesn't bother you. So all those people afraid of, for example, supernatural phenomena, if you, it's all the discrimination between it. Now, how you treat the inner realms has been so hard to speak about, because mainly nobody has believed in it that much. And that's the odd feeling I get when I speak, that I'm speaking about something that has always been here, but we have not noticed it. And that's the fascinating thing. You know, that's I would say, the most enlightening thing for me when I give these talks, where it's as if I am looking at something that I had seen before, but never at this level of care, right? So it's like, it's some things in life, they open up when you look at it long enough. What I mean by that is like the opportunity of expression just is taken somehow. Nature goes forth. It's like a command given to this universe. Everything has to just go beyond. And you know, let's say in the future, you know, a child comes home from school and the parent, you know, I'm just remembering my own childhood. I'm not thinking of like, I'm not a parent right now. But I was thinking, it was as if, imagine the child comes home and the child got bullied in school or something like that. And so the parent's like, hey, what's up? Why are you so quiet? And the child's like, nothing, everything is okay, everything is fine, right? And the parent's like, okay, you know, and the child goes, you know. But imagine the parent asks, hey, what's going on really in your inner realms? What's going on really in your inner realms means where is your attention right now? How is your attention right now? You know, even to itself, because our imagination, not the best way, but the way I like talking about it is, it's our own private office where the world moves more in accordance to our own rules. Yeah. I'm just saying, imagine a conscious future where we don't ignore inner space, where we find it honorable to explore inner space, to whatever challenges, whatever battlefields we find ourselves, we pilot on whatever sky, right? Because I'm telling you, there's a turbulence when it comes to identifying as something you're not. So if you identify as something where some part of you deep down knows you're not, you are burdened. Your intelligence becomes burdened, and the idea is to have it be as gentle as like surfing on waves or riding on a horse into some sort of battle or existential circumstance. Now, to speed this up a little bit, because there's so much to say, and I don't think I can even get all my ideas on really how to interact with the inner realms all out in one episode. But I would say this, that once you can discriminate between the inner space and the outer space, you have to realize that it's based on your eyes. So a way I trained personally. It was just something intuitive that came to me, and trying to figure out how can I discriminate between the inner and outer. And is that when your eyes are open, let's say a person, a young child sees an imaginary friend, and the young child sees the imaginary friend like some sort of cloud, like made of clouds kind of figure, jumping up and down, with the kid or something, like, you know what I mean? I'm saying some fantasy like kind of thing, right? So the parents are like, the parents don't see the imaginary friend, but the child sees the imaginary friend, right? That human being sees the imaginary friend. Now the thing is, that imaginary friend, a way you test to see what you see is really out there in the outer realms, is that when you close your eyes, does the information of it go away, or does it stay there? That means if somebody is from their inner realm seeing, let's say, an angel in the room, if they close their eyes, if they're visually, this is called clairvoyance, where a person's eyes is open and the biological sight goes in sync with the inner sight. And when these two go inner sight, the person is following the world story through its divine signs. I think those people who have experienced a sort of state like that, where they're excuse me, where they are honestly, honorably following the clues of the universal sector, So we categorize, even something I should have said earlier probably, we should categorize sight through consciousness. Our sensory perception is found in our consciousness, and our consciousness is located in the waking state. Right now, I'm a creature that is awake, in a state of waking. And from the waking state, I am speaking to you right now. But I know that, like, later tonight when I sleep, I'm going to have to go into the deep sleep state. Then I have to go into the dream state, if I have a dream or not, Then I have to wake up again, And then from deep sleep, it's as if the whole video game of life is resumed. And then the day continues on. So these are all the different states we have, and even in the Ribu Gita, they say, in yoga, they say there's a fourth state, which is the witness of all three at once. That means you cultivate a level of perception that is unconditional at its causal level. So when it's unconditional at its causal level, that means you attain, I shouldn't say attain, because there is no you. By the disappearance of the ego, the ultimate being is being, and that's how you realize it. That's how I would personally say, you get enlightened. So I would tell people that your inner space is in the intelligence, is the expression of is also the expression of the whole moment. I have, in certain phases of my life in the waking state, I've had a relationship with intelligent internal objects. But when the inner phenomena is a personality, there's a human component to it. And when there is a human component to it, there's a connection to reality. When there's a connection to reality, there's an ability to visualize intelligence. So it's just like how we look at a painting of a portrait, a painting of someone, let's say in an art gallery. It's as if when we look at that painting and see that person of, let's say you see a portrait of the Mona Lisa or whatever, that was, and so you look at Mona Lisa and you're like, okay, that was some person, it was based on an actual person, even though it was Da Vinci's self-portrait in a strange way, really. But like, so the Mona Lisa, we look at it and we see that person there, right? So what is taking our mind from looking at trees and any other inanimate phenomenon, just any other object of like a sort of pixel of color in our sensory perception? It's like any object could be given any meaning. So one, in order to be able to comprehend the nature of their mind, has to be able to walk observantly in whatever realm they find themselves in. This is the most important thing to cultivate, And what people should see the concept of honesty as what brings accuracy in the inner realms, because it doesn't create any diversion or distraction. There was a time where I've mentioned this in other talks before. I'll share you an inner experience I had. It's kind of hilarious. And in 2013, I was like this Persian guy who was wearing Tibetan Buddhist beads and living like a minimalist, and and I was really into I had bought a bunch of Tibetan Buddhist books. I'd just gone into a bookstore, and I just gave myself like 10 minutes, and intuitively I just selected a bunch of books from like this whole Buddhist section of the bookstore. And I remember I had come home and I was doing this research project for myself to kind of see like, okay, what am I? I remember I even had a notebook for it, where I was trying to just figure out what is the soul, what is this additional thing everybody's pointing to, but nobody really has dived to figure out, And so I remember I went to this, and now it was a very new age time. That was a time where I was like, oh my God, I'm from the stars, I identified, as an, as an Andromedan in a past or future life or something, it was a very humorous phase of my life, right? Even though it was like the time where somebody had told me the concept of like star seed, and I was like, oh my God, it's like the divine on earth, it was like very profound to me. So imagine being introduced to religious ideology, then through the New Age community, you begin introduced to galactic archetypes, So I remember there was something, and at that phase in 2013, when I tell you I was a minimalist, I am telling you not like it was very strange, not externally 100% minimalist, but in the inner realms minimalist. That means it's like, have you ever found yourself in a moment where you really don't know something? And because you really don't know, you automatically are comfortable with the silence of the void. So I remember I had this dream. In the dream there was like evil archetypes I was perceiving. So I had dedicated a day, this was in 2013, one day, where I went on this forum. I went on this online New Age forum, and I searched, okay, how do you contact your spirit guides, or the concept of the guardian angel, like that traditional, mystical idea. Or even religious idea. I was like, how do you contact if every person, because through the religious angle, there is a chaotic and ordered guide dimension for every person. As if there is like two beings. In Abrahamic religions, it was like how would I say it? It was like on one shoulder there was on your one shoulder was a devil, on the other was an angel or something like that, sort of Abrahamic idea. So whatever, it was just a fascination for me that if there were beings around me, how would I communicate to them? So but this is 2013, and who I was then is not who I am now in so many strange ways where I'd never even fathom I'd be here. But I'll tell you this. So I had one day where I went on this forum, and in the forum some guy had really sold his post. Like, he had written this thing where he's like, I have helped 800 plus people, to contact their spirit guides, so this is my technique. And the guy had shared this on a forum, right? And his whole technique was he would go and sit in a moment. He would be simple and sincere and sort of preferenceless, and he'd just be observant of the moment, both the outer space and the inner space, like the inner realms and the outer realms, simultaneously as the being is in the moment. And what you do is you say, I am ready to meet my guardian angels now, something like that, my spirit, like whatever archetype the person was trying to find in the book. Now I'm going to share with you what happened in the outer realms and then the inner realms. So I was alone at home, and there was the dining table, and it was a situation where I'm sitting at like a rectangular dining table. I'm sitting at one end, right? One of the short ends, right? And so I'm sitting there, and I'm just there, and it's like it's noon, it's afternoon, like maybe it was 1 p.m. I think, something like that. I remember it from the light of the sky, And so what happens is, after reading this thing on the forum of this guy saying I am ready, and then observing what happens, so I tried that, and what I experienced was, in my outer realms, nothing happened. Because it was just a room. But in my inner realms, I felt these 3 giant, like as if somebody had thrown 3 giant statues from the sky, and like with that intensity it had landed, right? So it was like I felt like these 3 beings. So I was on one side of the table, and in front of me there was 1, and 2 to my left and right. This was all in my inner realms, right? But back then I didn't even have this concept of inner realms, right? I was just like, whoa, just perceiving, So, later on, even names came to me, for these 3 archetypes that had come. But the first thing that so after I said that moment, my mind kind of went on with that finding. So it was as if I said that thing the guy had said in the forum. In my inner realms, I observed the presence of 3 beings, in front of me. And then that presence of them became like a relationship, and for the psyche to just wander through, And so eventually, I remember the first thing, the logos, I felt the truth, the glow of my truth communicated. What the logo said to me was that don't get attached to a face. Do you know that means? Imagine a being tells you, and I'm being poetic here, keep that in mind, because none of this is literal, it's all in the inner realms. So imagine an airplane passing by, that was the best time to imagine an airplane, by the way. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that in my inner realm, I had a relationship with the logos that I stopped seeing an image to it. And when you want to go beyond sensory perception, if you notice, there's only one thing you can do, and that's trust, faith. something that in the religious corners of the world, the idea still lingers. Faith means exploration's best outcome, but it doesn't mean exploration for desire's sake, you know. It's as if back in the day there was, let's say, the archetype of a devil on your left shoulder through the Abrahamic lens and an archetype of an angel on your right shoulder. In modern times, in 2021, I would say there is just the word desire on your left shoulder, you know, and the word trust on your right shoulder. Trust is symbiosis is perfection. It is multidimensionality. It is the peace. In a science fiction work I write, the main character, he does something in one of the chapters where some person says you have ended the war of worlds. It's not just people who are fighting. Our smallest acts shape our macro outcome. We are small, but we are significant. And that significance doesn't just begin from the dimension of the self, it doesn't also go from the dimension where the individual is with others, and then a dimension where the individual is in some sense in a collective movement, and then where the individual is the collective, right? So in a something I haven't shared before, in an advanced civilization, there will be elders. And when I say elders, there will be a legitimate reason, because it would be the transitioning of consciousness and the maturity of whatever life force is behind the eyes of the person viewing out, that this life force in some sense activates and it declares, not per se a strict allegiance to one side, but it's as if the multidimensional is welcome. You see, society is a theatrics of singular normality. Only one way of being is being accepted, which is nonsense when there's 8 billion beings with different DNAs, right? So society has so much room to evolve. That means innovation is everywhere. Anyways, so I established a relationship with archetypes in my inner realms, but then that archetype told me not to be attached to the inner realm phenomena. So I was found in a moment where, strangely, the moment is very empty to me. That means it's strange. In this life, I have actually experienced emptiness from the beginning of my birth. Emptiness of location, at least. You could imagine a young child running from somewhere, from one point to another point, you know, in some room or hallway, and that child knows that it is not its past movement. So memory teaches us time before we even learn the concept. And when we consider the human being to be an unknown intelligence, as an unknown intelligence, you can't judge it. You know, let's say in the future, someone who's worked really hard fails, for example, you know, or someone succeeds, and then suddenly they fail, right? Now, the idea would be not that they failed, that they diverted. Because in this life, there is enough peace and space for events to happen peacefully. Like, we have walked into the era of minds. We have evolved into the era of minds, right? So violence is going to become obsolete soon. That means, can you imagine in like, I'll give it maybe like 200 years. In 200 years, 100% would be there, where violence is boring. It's just, we got bored of just destroying things, and now the whole species is focused on what to create, and the advanced civilization being the best idea. So in the inner realms and the outer realms, the world goes forth. But there's some things about the inner realms people should know. One thing is that attention can instantaneously be any subject. That means the same moment you think you're a bad person, you can think you're a good person, you can think you're this, you can think you're that, and there's a spectrum of possibility. This doesn't mean ignoring the reality of your life, but it means that to live a good life, we have to be aware of what is happening. This is the ultimate teaching. Or what else can be an ultimate teaching for humanity? We have to just be aware of where we are and the value of where we are and the classification of this value and the opportunity for the hidden potential of our greater inner lives to express in the outer realms. A person's mind, I mean, we saw the movie even Castaway, the one where Tom Hanks is in, an incredible movie. That was like, that's it, That's when you imagine a plane, guys. That's when you imagine an airplane passing by. What I'm trying to say is that we stop reacting to our inner and outer realm. We observe the movement of life as an event. Ultimately, there is 4 types of contexts you can give to the realm. One context is that it's empty, nothing means anything. One context is that it's a singular intelligence, everything means everything. Then you can say there's a state where it's dualistic, where nothing and everything are both fighting and present as 2 universal forces. It's as if sometimes to me chaos and order is like, imagine being a villager back in the day in China and looking at the sky in a mythological way, and you suddenly see a giant white and a giant black dragon, like the yin-yang symbol, are spiraling around one another in the moonlight, in the sense that it's as if it's like, can you imagine just seeing something in the sky, or like the same awe you would find if you would see a phoenix in the air? So you find yourself in a context of a realm which is dualistic, and beyond duality it's infinity, and this infinity is really where we're going, but we're not there yet, as a civilization. Individually, any moment you can realize the infinite expression of the universe happening with an interdependence. That means, there was this idea of no person left behind, but then we have this mentality where we're all being, so society right now, there's honestly 4 types of advanced civilizations that can be built. But for us, we have to make do with the singular and the dualistic first. These are the challenges. Because when we observe beyond language, there's going to be a silent zone where the species is going to get quiet because of its shock that language is not reality. In that silent zone, exploration becomes very key, and really it's as if life is not designed to be perfect. It's actually designed to update. So if one, I don't want to say has an improvement mindset, because when you don't know what you're improving to, how can you want to improve? First there has to just be observation of reality. I called it I'm not sure what the term I use, but it's like every moment has its own logic, has its own systematic interpretation of the realm. But the funny thing is, based on the type of context you see, that's what your meaning is. So if somebody thinks this whole universe is empty, they have more reasons to be cruel. If they think this whole universe is one intelligence, they have less reasons to be cruel. If they feel the whole reality is dualistic. It's as if you are endlessly reincarnating. You have to, what you have not perceived a greater outline, a context to the realm. So it's as if you didn't understand what was being taught. And what I mean by that is that there was an ignorance to the source of self. The inner realms animate. My approach is I give freedom. I realize when you give freedom to the world makes the first chess move and you learn from that. Those new age people who follow their synchronicities, it's as if the next phase after following synchronicities is noticing the unknown and trusting it. And when you trust the unknown, it doesn't mean foolishness through lack of caution. It means you allow your eyes to find the edge of your meaning in this life. And there, from that edge, you know, just like Jon Snow on the Night's Watch, where you need to go, you know. The pilot analogy, I feel, is also the healthiest analogy. So we can speak about imagination or clairvoyant phenomena, the views of clairvoyance, as just how we have piloted as a mind in a world, you know. Because objects are just being excuse me. Oh my God. Objects are being just objects. Because they are not animate, they can't have meaning in a sense. They're empty. The Buddha observed this. So when we realize an object is empty and it's how our eyes look at it that gives it meaning, that imposes, that projects the meaning into the object. You know, it's the same when we read. We're just looking at ink on a piece of paper, you know, but to the person who can read well, what they read becomes a film and they can't wait to get to the next page, as if like they're fascinated by this film, this internal cinematic experience, right? So the species has to eventually train its inner realms. The educational system doesn't even want to speak about a subjective evolution, and the continental philosophers have been silenced, you know. So it's this weird phase in history where I'm like, yo, you know, we're being denied our multidimensional birthright to live in a civilization that can acknowledge multiple dimensions and still come up with an efficient strategy where all experience the greatest potential. You know what it is? It's like that strategy where if you are alive once, then why not aim at the most efficient thing you can do? And when you wonder about the most efficient thing, you're actually wondering about the most efficient state. And when you wonder about that state of being becomes the filter, this where the meaning of life extends from. So how you hold yourself in the moment. In Japan, they had an incredible concept. It was this like Japanese saying that when something like the man is the room he's in, that means it's every moment is its own room. When two people have a conversation, their language, their phenomenology, and their inner realms and their ability to communicate builds a world between them, right? And when each person honestly shares, you know, then that reality advances, right? Just the inner realm phenomena happens. So we can actually, through dialogue and speech, and this is what I envision, that every community in the world on this planet, all human beings, they eventually form tribes of information, right? But of advanced communication. What I mean by that is, you know, just like every person, wherever they are, they develop a trusted community which has no agenda other than to have human beings have come to one location to have discussions on what is going on in the world. When questions are general, many people can access it. When questions become specific, then the philosopher has made too much of an egoic mistake. That means if the person thinks, how do we survive beyond extinction, that could be too overwhelming of a problem. But if the person thinks about how can I survive until tomorrow, that's a very much more bearable problem, right? And the idea is that the standards of living of human beings has updated. We know this. So this suggests that it has a sort of point where it's going to lift off. Right? So what's the best thing we can do on a sphere is to prepare for a life in the sky. This means every person alive on the planet Earth right now in 2021 should be so happy that we are still on this earth, because in the future, due to circumstances of overpopulation and mismanagement of institutional systems, the world is going to become heavy. When society and culture becomes heavy, we reach a point where people are too tired to advance civilization, so they just give in to what's happening, thinking that's nature's way. The concept of everything being nature is also, from a sociological perspective, of an illusion. There are some things that generate, like some forces, pretty much it's as if the whole universe is as a multidimensional system where various forces of life forces, or life streams, like every person's soul is like a needle with a string attached to it, and this needle is weaving into the space-time continuum a sort of karmic referential system of memory, which when it goes to universal memory, you remember no longer people, you no longer remember yourself as a person, you remember universal events, but then you are also the primary witness of the consciousness of your inner realms. So once we find fulfillment of self-inquiry in the outer realms, which means any person, wherever you are on this planet, whatever situation you're going through, just sit down and just cross-legged with your spine straight, sit still and silent for 10 minutes and don't do anything. You are just letting go of every thought, and you're just watching the moment as if you are the supreme observer of reality. Not as if you will come to that conclusion on your own ultimately, because the wonder of self has an influence on the free will. That means it's as if you can't put advanced technology in front of someone and not expect for them to react, But advanced technology in the outer realms is a machine. In the inner realms, it's a subjective perspective of what I would say the efficient vision. That means every moment has a genius angle to look at it, but this genius has nothing to do with your past and nothing to do with the, I shouldn't say nothing to do with the future, but it's as if like when you can see worlds become a world, and when you can see a world to become worlds, Mr.Within would say you have attained flight of mind. And when I say geometry has a relationship with mathematics, but geometry is like the soul. You know what it is? Geometry is the fabric of a subject. Our subjective experience has incredible geometric and mathematical components, and I would say that mathematics and geometry are perfect subjects to explain metaphysics with. Do you know how much more interesting, those classes would become in university, If the teacher was like, hey kids, we have the concept of infinity, your mind should be blown right now. A number infinitely goes. That means we can never know the largest number ever. There was even this mathematician who asked his grandson, like, what should you name the largest number in the world? And the grandson was like, Googleplex, you know? And this young kid said Googleplex, and this mathematician was so badass that he made that the term, right? He stayed honest, honorable to the grandson, you know? So it was this whole idea that a Googleplex, let me show you a picture of it. This is something cool for mathematicians to know, I think. Probably many mathematicians know this, physicists as well. There we go. This is a hilarious picture that explains this in a simple way, what I'm trying to say. So that's a really large number, and mathematics has to do with attempts at engaging the infinite. And I don't know if I ever finished saying it, but this mathematician would say, my God bleeds mathematics, you know, this notable mathematician in history. So it was as if the hidden dimensions of the realm require a conscious numerical engagement. Geometry and mathematics could be said to be a sort of sword and shield when it comes to trying to contemplate phenomena, because mathematics has a principal role in just meaning, in I would just say epistemology, because we have to have the ability to be able to say this is one and this is two. That was like a giant leap, you know, and I don't know if many people know this, but the number 0 wasn't found first. This is why we have two sets, you know, natural numbers and whole numbers, you know, because some civilizations, they didn't have the concept of 0 yet. Maybe for them it was still emptiness, they hadn't numericized it, you know. I have had moments where I've gone on walks, and a lot of the science fiction I write, they were inner events. So when I say there's an internal object, and that means there's an internal world where that object is, if that object moves in the inner space, it will in some sense be an internal event. So the mind is an event, is like another dimension where the world is happening overlaid on the actual physical reality. So the mind is like in its own room, and the body is in its own room, and René Descartes, props to him for shouting this out to the world. A lot of mystical traditions have to, but René Descartes really grabbed the attention of the years of universities. One, if there was, let's say, we got a message, there was like some sort of miraculous sign in the sky, and that really said the aliens were here. And let's say we knew the aliens were here, but they were aliens in another dimension. So that means, imagine we got a message in an interdimensional bottle, you know. and we take out the letter and we see it's as if like extraterrestrials have landed, but they have landed in a different dimension than where we are, and they have also established a sort of reality. Imagine, this is all hypothetical and abstract. But let's say if that was the case, so we knew that there was intelligent higher dimensional presence here, the next question would be, what do we do with that? Right? And so the idea would be is that we either get rid of the strange or we communicate with it. So in our ability to try to communicate with an invisible intelligence, we have to take in the fact that the invisible intelligence may not need language. So we have to realize in any sort of communication with higher intelligence, we are the ones limited. We are, if it was a chess game, we're the piece that goes second. So it would be a sort of realism that way. So you would have to realize it's how you hold your mind. And this is where, before this episode, I gave a talk on the global antenna renaissance. And when that antenna renaissance happens, you begin to see your mind as an antenna. And that's a very cool thing. That means in the future, children are going to be able to, let's say some children have gone, like, imagine when you were young and you went camping, and imagine suddenly in the middle of camping, you went and sat on a rock and closed your eyes, and for like a moment, you were like, I shouldn't say one with nature, but you were the stillness of the cosmos, and from the stillness, you witnessed to know. And imagine a major political thing or a major world event happens, and that person in the camp, let's say you're in that campsite on that rock, you suddenly realize it, right? So I'm saying that would be the ability, that would be the level of trying to discover what kind of antenna your DNA is. Antenna of meaning, So every person has their own relationship with their mind, right? And this needs to be discussed, because if you don't take the relationship you have with your own intelligence seriously, it means you haven't looked at it. So, consciousness, mindfulness, and eventually the recognition, at least through Vedic thought, of the concept of Sat Chit Ananda. You gotta realize this concept before you actually can pilot in the inner realms easily. Sat Chit Ananda means conscious existence is bliss. It means there are 3 dimensions to life. You gotta train yourself as a human being to observe these 3 dimensions. One is the dimension of consciousness. So you gotta realize your consciousness right now, and I'm pretty sure everybody has. As Manly P. Hall in one of his lectures said, it's like realizing, it's like becoming aware that you are aware. Right? So, and that's one dimension of reality one needs to have a conscious ability with, relationship with. And then there is Sat Chit Ananda, so then there is existence. And so in Vedic thought, there's this notion that Purusha, Prakriti, consciousness and matter arise simultaneously. Without a world who has consciousness, where do they have consciousness? Do you know? Without consciousness, what world? Where is the consciousness located? So we have to realize that our intelligence in an unknown universal event is wondering, in some sense, of the subjective totality of meaning and the objective totality of meaning, the witness of the subject and object simultaneously, and ultimately the recognition that presence is nature's freedom. So when you realize you're as natural as a bird flying in the sky, you would just relax in this lifetime, and you become fascinated by how the world soul moves as perception. So the idea is, we are content with the unknown, as Socrates would say. To know that, I don't know if it was this way he said it, but the idea was pretty much like when you realize you don't know anything, that's the most advanced state of knowledge you could be in, because the world is so big, right? So there is no ego necessary when we are trying to respond to infinity as a species. An infinite void, like what we do here. It's as if all this space in the universe and we're just living on a rock. You know, there's so much so much external purpose, you know. And eventually civilization would advance. I'm just an early bird shouting it out, you know, in some cyberspace global event. But I'm saying that really what it is that firstly, life is alive in a way where consciousness knows its consciousness before anything, any content is defined. So before language, we know that we are knowing we know. That is phenomenal. As a species, as a creature, we can do that. Just somehow there's a mind. Now, the question of René Descartes' mind-body dualism is important, and as I tried to simplify it as overlays of what your mind is doing is overlaid on how your body is, what your body is doing. And you can say, if you have a gentle mind, your mind is polite to your body, so your physical observation of reality is in accordance to the body's momentum. So if you're a person who really wants to live a physical life, you will strangely find multidimensional ideas skipping you know. And this is all a sort of calling for a species to remember really that the intelligence is unknown. Even there was this article written, I remember reading this article when I was 11, like that only like a certain limited percentage of the brain is being active. Right now when as I'm speaking to you, it's being considered that I'm using like less than 12% of the brain, just like everybody else, right? For example, we fathom dolphins using 20% of the brain, but this was what I heard in some sense when I was 11 years old, and it got me fascinated into the mind, like the article did its job. But let me tell you how this perspective is flawed and the counter arguments to really how the inner landscape is positioned. So what it is that we still, because we have been conditioned to be an individual object our whole lives, we don't know what to do when we realize intelligence is also incarnated through space. So that's what the mind is. The mind is like, you know what it is? It's like a creature it's like a dolphin jumping outside of water and then jumping back into the water, right? And so back into the water is like the unconscious of deep sleep. Jumping out of the water is like the consciousness of the waking state and the multidimensional access. So it's as if there's two rooms, and our head is above water, is in another dimension, but our body is in a different dimension. So it's as if, in a poetic way, just for the sake of giving it dimensions, don't take this as what it is. I'm just saying, like, okay, let's say there was in another parallel universe of Earth a third dimension and a fourth dimension, and the third dimension was material, the fourth dimension was immaterial. The fourth dimension was the extension, or I shouldn't say extension, the superior root of the third dimension. So if a higher intelligence is in the room, it's as if you respect the elder in the room, but the elder is not an ideological framework. This is where honesty is required to be able to even observe your own mind, right? So when you're honest, you know what's there and you know what's not there. You don't have a question about it, right? You can tell, right? But if the inner realms animate, and here's the thing where the antenna of the brain can catch rhythms. We see this in rock stars on stage going into the zone, like in musicians. We see this in artists, like paintings quickly. You know, we see this in like people giving speeches or whatever, right? So in many moments in life, in athleticism, we see it a lot, you know, where the athlete has just gone into the zone and is doing everything right, and it's remarkable. Even in like, you know, like breakdancing, you know, breakdancing is like breakdancing is something where I think if aliens land, we should bring all the best breakdancers in the world, and we'll be like fascinate the aliens, guys, you know, and we play like 80s, you know, trance, you know. So what I'm trying to say is observation with the honesty that you're on a rock in the middle of nowhere and there's more unknown than known, and the best thing we can do is somehow utilize what we know, as if like a castaway situation where we're finding tools, and recognize the mind has an ability to animate objects into characters, right? So a person, like children, when they play with a toy, the reason they're playing with that toy, because in their mind they're either being that toy, or that toy is being something separate to them, as like the toy is as alive as their mind, right? And when we go in life, we judge people always through our own past, not theirs, you know. Even the problem with all the isms we find in reality, you know, racism, sexism, all of these is just because there is an ignorance to the design of the chessboard. That means all systems have, in any sort of fog, they can find their feet on the ground. To have an advanced relationship with your intelligence, and the most advanced state is instantaneous trust. Trusting an instant of how the realm is happening. It's kind of cool, actually. You know, it's like our culture has been so individualistic that we have forgotten our relationship with collective intelligence. The inner realms, I have to mention this because I can't believe it myself how this has happened, but we live in a psychedelic civilization. That means the food content that human beings consume, do you know, and any other chemical relationship they have with the moment is something that is found in the cultural sphere. Right? So what that means is it's not just free will that is moving ideas, you know, it is also one's biological, how the antenna is kept in the moment that suggests what one receives. Now, as a human being, I would say the simplest strategy would be also to see that just the word human and being, like 50% of life, you just have to be in moments. I mean, all of it you're in a moment, but I'm saying like 50% you're consciously, you're like a passenger, and 50% you're a driver. You know? And this is not like, it's a fair evaluation, but realistically people can be on and off. You know, there's some days in my life where I have just raged in my inner realm, so I've gotten angry at a circumstance, but in my outer realms I just efficiently handled it quickly and just moved on, right? But that event bothered me later on throughout the day, and the way it appeared was it in my inner realms I was like throwing fire at the wall, you know. So it was as if like it was a sort of thing where I expressed the anger and the rage of whatever was going on in, like, you could say 10-20 minutes of just in my inner realms expressing that energy, right? So energy can be kind of piloted in your inner realms, or it can be piloted towards the outer realms. Right now when I'm giving this talk, I am simultaneously trying to do both, right? Where I'm trying to speak about reality as a context, but the concept is going beyond the context, and I'm like, how do I speak about this, right? So I have to geometrically shift the context, right? Because really what is going on is knowledge is film transference. It's internal cinematic transference throughout the generations. Right? There's no such thing as one kind of knowledge. That is foolishness. This world is so vast, like, you know, who dares, you know, even name it? You know, so it is one of those things where we have to be fools when it comes to the exploration of the greater, you know. That means in the future, when someone becomes an honest fool, let's say someone is honestly doesn't know better and makes a mistake, everybody in the civilization is going to find a moment and bow to that person, you know, and they would be like, you, sir, are an honest fool. You know, and so the civilization does not let attention get occupied by inefficiency, because it's like, who has the time for that? So anyways, guys, this topic is endless because there's so much going on in our inner realms. We can even make the argument that all of the outer realms is from the inner realms. We can make the argument that the inner realms are from the outer realms. If you take a scientific approach, the outer realms is more of a possibility. But if you are bored in the outer realms, you will eventually go to the inner realms. What that means is like forget the word spirituality and just think of it this way: that life will expand in its dimensions of perception, and when it does, the acknowledgement of reality becomes clear. Right? And so clarity doesn't mean a systematic dictator-like institution trying to enlighten everybody. It's like, that's ridiculous. You know, it's like we're all designed to be different. It's just that we can incorporate techniques in our life, right? It's like a master swordsman doesn't 100% become like, like let's say a student of a master swordsman doesn't 100% imitate the master swordsman. Why? Because you can't. Because everybody is their own unique position. Everybody has their own angle of ability if they dare to find it, right? And when it comes to visualization, this is an ability. And I'll tell you something fascinating. It takes so much energy to move an object from a table to let's say, across a very long hallway to another table. But I will tell you, in your inner realms, it takes less energy and it instantly happens. So the inner realms, your mind, is a great ability of a human being to be able to observe, visualize various probabilities to the moment, then engage, right? Then do whatever, right? So that's very key to cultivate multidimensional perception, right? And tolerance, and it's like with there's a hidden honor behind our eyes that when that dares to step out, civilization will find its true leaders. Because really, it's like how Lao Tzu would said, something you don't hear in all these leadership conferences, where it says after the leader's work is done, the people would say we did it ourselves. It's like another way of saying somebody going up to Buddha and saying, hey Buddha, after you Mahasamadhi out of here, is there gonna be another Buddha? And so that person, Buddha looked at that person and he's like, no, because Buddhism has spread so much that we all have attained the Buddhic nature. And Buddha the word means awakened. So we have all awakened to the true presence of what is intelligently happening here, right? And it's I shouldn't say it's the honor of a lifetime. It's when your eyes reveal themselves to you, because that's the coolest thing, So the mind is like you should have a very Zen, like in Zen, like Zen tea ceremonies. I mean, this is totally a tangent, but in Zen tea ceremonies, when the person is drinking tea, that's all they are doing. No other identity, no other thought. They're just a person lifting a cup of tea and drinking it with the awareness that everything can be empty for a moment, and just the event is the only thing found for concentration. I remember I saw this film where it was about golf players, and there were these I don't remember the film, but there were these two golf players, and it was showing their inner realm vision. The director was somehow showing their inner realm vision. One golf player went and was about to hit the ball, then the film changed the cinematic atmosphere, and you suddenly felt you were just in this guy's mind, and the camera zoomed in onto the ball, and zoomed in onto the hole, something like that, where the camera zoomed in, where it was as if one person just tried to concentrate in the moment where there were crowds and distractions only on that one singular thing. So then there was another golf player where this golf player came to shoot the ball, but instead of zooming in, the crowd slowly disappeared. And it was just the ball and, where it had to go. And that, I would say, that state of inner realm where you start from simplicity, the truth, you're trying to find a simple truth. The simple truths of reality are like the first wave of information that stops the meaning of the rest. And so when a person finds a simple, true state, then it's very easy to learn and observe how the complexity happens. That's it. When you can trust the simple, you have strangely trusted the source of complexity. So we start simple, and conversations, explanations to children should be simple so that the complexity also is left for their exploration, That means these episodes I'm giving, they're for everybody, of course. I try to give it in a way where everybody can hear it. But when I think about it, really it's for those who feel civilization can do something better than what it is doing now and deserves something better. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I will talk about the inner realms pretty much throughout the lifetime of this podcast a lot. It is an idea that I will talk about it until it's grounded into the cultural fabric, where we can become mature enough as a species to be multidimensional, to be singular, to be void, and to be infinite. These are incredible and important approaches to life. That means when we notice change in reality, we in some sense are witnessing zero, something that was singular going to zero, or something that was singular going to the dual, or something that was dual going to the infinite, or going to the singular then zero, right? So there's this constant simplicity, complexity, aura around every phenomena. A dualistic aura. And really the reason for this is the linguistic simulation, how language is simulating a world over a world that has no meaning, and we are taking the world we're simulating on the meaningless world so seriously that we are not realizing what is us and what is potentially something beyond us that is happening in this emptiness. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the founder of American Transcendentalism, he was a man who loved nature, and you could kind of say his guru was nature, and he had this view that he had, from a religious cultural perspective, you could say he was a simple religious man back in the day who went into nature. And so he had this view that God, we are all souls, and souls are God. So his view was that your relationship with your soul is your relationship with God. And in a modern secular way, I would say your relationship with your intelligence can potentially be your relationship with universal intelligence, with something that is universally present as a quality of its being. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and be conscious of your inner realms and outer realms, and we pilot, all that I'm saying is that the world is multidimensional rather than just in one angle, and it can be being, all of it being oneness is possible, but that's 1/4 of reality. chaos and order is 1/4 of reality. Infinity is 1/4 of reality. The void is 1/4 of reality. And this is like a circle. This is what these are. This is how I have kind of contemplated so far in my own efforts of this lifetime. So anyways, thanks for listening, and thanks for all the new members who have joined so far, by the way. I thought I had to mention this. You know, it's an honor, and I will try to, usually after the episodes, I write my own review on how the episode was for members. So, but anyways, people can engage. The free will is free, you know, and a person named Will probably knows this. You know, we got a free will from our free will. You know, so what I mean by this is that language is just nonsense. You will see that language is a simulation, is a shorter simulation, and physical reality is a longer simulation. We say in dreams, you know, because guys, let me tell you, when we play with language, when I look at words, I separate the words, you know. So when I look at free will, I see the concept of free will, but then I see each individual word having its own meaning, because you can't speak and not have the brain responding to the stimulus, you know. Our eyes are open, and to discover how far they are open is the effort of an advanced civilization. Personal character can never be known. At our core, we are witnesses of, we are an energy. I'm pretty sure every person on this planet acknowledges there's some kind of energy, right? Like, so what do we say about energy in the first law of, I believe, thermodynamics? It's that energy cannot be created or destroyed. When energy cannot be created or destroyed, it in some sense means that the source of intelligence cannot die, it can only transform. That means energy has nowhere to die to, you know, nowhere to go, you know. So this means death is a purely human idea. Energy is energy. You know, energy is like, look at these human beings, you know, wearing the costume of life and death when everything is. Right? If you identify as the totality of the universal moment, you would not only be known as a mystic, but you would also be known as a human being that transcended their humanism. Right? And in the future, cyberspace is going to cause us to transcend our humanism. Literature and art and entertainment, which is going to eventually infuse. Cyberspace is going to become so fascinating in the future that all industries will be affected by it. So really, we don't realize that human beings are actually way simpler than we thought as creatures. That means we give the human being an infinite algorithm, and for its whole life it'll chase a form. But really, if we had truly informed human beings on this planet, human beings that were so informed that they knew they were being informed right now. Because that's what information is. It's how something is. And the direct experience of what is really where the divine awaits. The unknown mysteries of this realm call us forth in a way where none of our ancestors could say. You know, it is the sky has spoken. You know, thanks for listening, guys. Much blessings and namaste.